The Russian phrase «Если в 27-ю ночь месяца» translates to if on the 27th night of the month. Here's a breakdown. Если if, on, in, a preposition, 27-ю, 27th, in the accusative feminine form, ночь, night, месяца, of the month. So the phrase introduces a conditional clause. It sounds like the beginning of a sentence, perhaps leading to something like, the sky is clear, it will be a good harvest. Would you like me to... The phrase «Рамазана кого-нибудь коснется священное» in Russian is a bit ungrammatical or out of context, but literally it translates to, open quote, the sacred something of Ramadan will touch someone, close quote. More natural translations, depending on intended meaning, could be, the sacredness of Ramadan will touch someone. Someone will be touched by the holiness of Ramadan. In Russian, a more correct phrasing would be, open quote, священность Рамазана кого-нибудь коснется, which means the holiness of Ramadan will touch someone, close quote. Would you like me to... The Russian phrase «тросточка» исполнятся любые его желания translates to a little cane, any of his wishes will come true, or more smoothly, a little cane that can make any of his wishes come true. Let's break it down. Тросточка, diminutive of трост, meaning cane or walking stick. Тросточка, little cane or small stick. Исполнятся любые его желания, any of his wishes will come true, or all his wishes will be fulfilled. So it likely refers to a magical cane that grants wishes. The Russian phrase «из рассказов моей бабушки» translates to from my grandmother's stories, or from the stories my grandmother told in English. Here's a breakdown. Из, from, рассказов, stories, plural genitive case, моей бабушки, my grandmother's possessive form, so it literally means from the stories of my grandmother. It's often used as a title for memoirs, folk tales, or nostalgic writings based on family or cultural traditions. The Russian phrase «когда утреннее солнце поднялось из-за горизонта» translates to when the morning sun rose above the horizon. It's the beginning of a sentence, so it sounds like it would continue with what happened next. For example, open quote, «Когда утреннее солнце поднялось из-за горизонта, город уже просыпался». When the morning sun rose above the horizon, the city was already waking up. Close quote. The Russian phrase «всю окрестность словно бы залило жидким огнем» translates roughly to, open quote, the whole area seemed to be flooded with liquid fire, close quote. Or more naturally in English, open quote, it was as if the whole surroundings were bathed in liquid fire, close quote. Breakdown, всю окрестность, the whole area, surroundings, neighborhood, словно бы, as if, as though. Залило was flooded, was filled, was drenched. Жидким огнем, with liquid fire, a vivid metaphor suggesting intense light, heat, or flames spreading everywhere. It's a poetic or literary expression, often used to describe a dramatic sunset, explosion, or fire that lights up everything around. The Russian phrase «лучи светила горели на тысячах недвижных фигур» can be translated into English as, open quote, the rays of the luminary shone on thousands of motionless figures, close quote. Let's break it down word by word. Luci, rays, svitila of the luminary, a poetic word for the sun, star, or other bright celestial body. Garele were burning, shone, glowed. Na tысячах on thousands, literally on thousands of. Недвижных фигур, motionless figures, immobile forms, statues, or people standing still. It's a very poetic or literary line. It evokes an image of stillness and grandeur, perhaps statues or frozen people illuminated by sunlight or another celestial glow. Would you like me to tell you where it's from? The Russian phrase «Sama земля мертвого города и его руины» translates to, open quote, the very ground of the dead city and its ruins, close quote, or more literally, open quote, the land itself of the dead city and its ruins, close quote. Here's a breakdown. Sama, itself, or the very, emphasizing the noun. Земля, earth, ground, or land. Мертвого города, of the dead city. И его руины, and its ruins. So the phrase evokes an image of desolation. Even the land and ruins of a dead city themselves are being described. The Russian phrase «также покрывшийся золотистым налетом» translates to also covered with a golden coating, or also covered with a golden sheen in English. Breaking it down, также, also, покрывшийся, having become covered, past particle fifth form, золотистым налетом, with a golden coating, a golden film, a golden tint. So in context, it could describe something like leaves, objects, or surfaces that have also become covered with a golden shimmer or layer. The Russian phrase «нестерпимо сияли» translates to shone unbearably or were shining unbearably in English. Here's a breakdown. «Нестерпимо, unbearably, intolerably. Сияли, shone, were shining. Past tense, plural form of сиять, to shine. So in context, it might describe something like the stars shone unbearably bright. Звезды нестерпимо сияли. The Russian sentence «Только один предмет во всей окрестности выделялся в этом море солнечного огня» can be translated into English as only one object in the entire vicinity stood out in this sea of sunlight. Только один предмет, or only one object, во всей окрестности, in the entire vicinity. Выделялся, stood out, в этом море солнечного огня, in this sea of sunlight. Literally, sea of solar firelight. It's quite a poetic phrase, emphasizing a singular object standing out amid bright sunlight. If you want, I can also suggest a slightly more literary or natural-sounding English version. Do you want me to do that? The Russian phrase «темное яйцевидное сооружение с выступавшими в нижней части его тонкими отростками» literally translates to a dark, egg-shaped structure with thin protrusions extending from its lower part. Темное equals black. Dark, яйцевидное сооружение equals egg-shaped structure с выступавшими в нижней части его тонкими отростками, with thin appendages, protrusions, sticking out from its lower part. It sounds like a descriptive phrase from biology or anatomy, maybe describing a seed, an organ, or even some kind of microscopic organism. If you want, I can try to guess what object or organism this description refers to based on the phrasing. It has a very technical, scientific tone. Do you want me to? The Russian phrase «похожими на лапки кузнечика» literally translates to resembling the little legs of a grasshopper, or like the legs of a grasshopper. Похожими на, similar to, resembling, like. Лапки, little legs, diminutive of лапы, legs, paws. Кузнечика, of a grasshopper, genitive case of grasshopper. So it's a descriptive phrase, often used to describe something tiny, thin, or jointed in a way that looks like a grasshopper's legs. If you want, I can suggest a few natural ways to phrase it in English that would sound more fluent. The Russian phrase «К полудню на боковой поверхности яйца обозначилось прямоугольное отверстие» can be translated into English as by noon, a rectangular opening appeared on the side surface of the egg. К полудню, by noon, на боковой поверхности, on the side surface, яйца egg, in quotes, implying it's an object nicknamed or shaped like an egg. Обозначилось appeared, became visible, was marked. Прямоугольное отверстие. Rectangular opening. It seems to describe some object nicknamed an egg that developed a rectangular hole by midday. If you want, I can also explain the nuance of обозначилось, which has a slightly softer sense than just appeared. The Russian phrase «И вскоре из него один за другим появились двое» can be translated into English as «and soon two of them appeared from it, one after the other». «И вскоре» and soon, из него from it, один за другим, one after another, one by one, появились двое, two appeared. If you want, I can also help make it sound more natural in English depending on the context. Do you want me to do that? The Russian phrase «Они были очень похожи на людей» translates to «They looked very much like humans» or «They were very much like humans». It literally breaks down as «Они, they», «были», past tense of to be, «очень, very», «похожи», similar, like, «на людей», to people, humans. If you want, I can also give a slightly The Russian phrase «однако намного выше и крупнее обычного человека» translates to English as «however, much taller and larger than an ordinary person». Однако, however, nevertheless, намного выше, much taller, и крупнее, and bigger, larger, обычного человека than an ordinary person. If you want, I can also suggest a slightly smoother, more natural English version. The Russian sentence. Полупрозрачные колпаки у них на головах излучали ослепительный свет translates into English as the translucent caps on their heads emitted a dazzling light. Полупрозрачные, translucent, semi-transparent. Колпаки, caps, helmets, у них на головах, on their heads. Излучали, emitted, radiated, ослепительный свет. Blinding, dazzling light. It has a very sci-fi or fantastical tone. If you want, I can also make a slightly more literary, natural English version that keeps the imagery. The Russian phrase «сделав несколько шагов», тот, кто шел первым, translates to English as having taken a few steps, the one who was walking first. It's a partial sentence, so it sounds like it would continue with the Russian phrase «остановился и заговорил» translates to stopped and spoke, or stopped and began to speak in English. It's often used in narrative or dialogue to indicate that someone paused in what they were doing and then started talking. The colon at the end usually introduces the words the person says next. Do you want me to give a slightly more natural, conversational translation too? The Russian sentence, Kiev, кажется, мы ошиблись в расчетах, translates to, Kiev, it seems we made a mistake in the calculations. Kiev, likely a name or nickname, Kiev. Кажется, it seems, or apparently. Мы ошиблись в расчетах, we made a mistake in the calculations, or we miscalculated. If you want, I can also explain the tone. It sounds casual, like someone realizing an error with a colleague. Do you want me? The Russian phrase «грунт на месте посадки должен быть не столь твердым» translates to English as «the soil at the planting site should not be too hard». It's essentially giving advice about planting, emphasizing that the ground should be soft enough for roots to grow. If you want, I can also The Russian phrase «а примерно таким» can be translated into English as and something like this, or and roughly like this, depending on the context. And or but often connects sentences or clauses. Примерно, approximately, roughly, or about. Takim, like this or this way, referring to the manner, appearance, or kind of something. It's often used when giving an example or describing something in an approximate way. If you want, I can give a few natural English alternatives that capture how a Russian speaker might actually use it in conversation. The Russian phrase "как у нас на Унете" literally translates to like we have on Unet or as it is on Unet. Here's a breakdown. Как, like as. У нас, at our place, we have. На Унете, on Unet, probably referring to a network, platform, or system called Unet. So the speaker is comparing something to how it works or exists on Unet. Context would clarify if it's about a service, website, internal network, or something else. If you want, I can also